Years ago, during an archaeological dig, I stopped my fiancée's childhood friend, Ethan, from stealing artifacts. He brutally murdered me, dismembering and disposing of my body. He then slandered me, claiming that I was a thief who had stolen artifacts and fled the scene when discovered. Thus, I became a fugitive, scorned by everyone. My aunt berated me for betraying my parents, who had dedicated their lives to archaeology, and for bringing shame to our family. My fiancé broke off our engagement and had my child aborted. It wasn't until 4 years later that my remains were delivered to her lab for cranial reconstruction. Dr. Lin, this is a skull we unearthed yesterday at an archaeological site in the suburbs. A police captain pushed open the door, carrying a yellowed cardboard box in his hands. The condition isn't good. It's severely damaged. Olivia put on her gloves and gently removed the skull. I floated beside her, watching everything. After 4 years, I was finally seeing her again. Preliminary analysis indicates it's a male, with the time of death approximately 4 years ago. Can it be reconstructed? The captain asked. Olivia nodded. It will take some time. Olivia continued her analysis. The fractures to the skull were caused by repeated heavy blows. Judging from the angles of impact, the blunt instrument used by the perpetrator must have been quite heavy and destructive. The initial attack was likely concentrated on the back and right temporal bone regions. She pointed to the cracks in the skull as she spoke, going into a detailed analysis. Based on the shape and distribution of these injuries, the perpetrator likely used a metal rod or hammer-like tool. The blunt trauma too. The base of the skull suggests that, after the initial blows, the victim was likely already down, but the perpetrator didn't stop there. Olivia placed her hand on the depression at the base of the skull and continued. The blunt force trauma to the base of the skull was particularly lethal. Such an injury would cause instantaneous bleeding and damage to the brain, possibly resulting in immediate death for the victim. The captain crouched down to closely examine the areas Olivia was indicating. If the blows were so heavy, the victim would barely have had a chance to retaliate. Could the perpetrator have been someone known to him? Did he strike when the victim was caught off guard? Olivia frowned and said slowly, that possibility can't be excluded. What's more, there are also some small fractures on the side of the skull, indicating that the perpetrator may have continued to strike the victim after he fell. This repeated attack could be due to intense hatred or to ensure that the victim wouldn't survive. The captain nodded. Then it is definitely premeditated murder. Olivia's 2 assistants were recording data. I think Paul was lost around that same archaeological site 4 years ago, said Liam to his colleague, Ben. What Paul? Ben scoffed. Besides, he wasn't lost. Everyone knows he tried to steal artifacts and ran away when he was discovered. Really? Is there proof? Of course it's true. That's what Ethan said. He even got hit with a rod when trying to stop that guy. Suddenly, the work in the office ceased. Liam and Ben realized that Olivia was still in the room. Sorry, Dr. Lin, we didn't mean it, Liam said hastily. Olivia stood up, her tone cold. Don't mention that name again. His actions are a disgrace to the archaeological community. I'm ashamed to admit that I was once with him. Hearing her so decisively deny me, my heart felt like it was being slashed by an invisible knife. Those rumors about me, those accusations, were all misunderstandings and slanders. I wasn't a criminal who stole artifacts, nor did I flee out of guilt. I was killed by that so-called childhood friend of yours, Ethan. My inner cries could only be swallowed by her coldness. After saying this, Olivia's face suddenly turned pale. She steadied herself with her hand on her waist, looking unstable on her feet. Ben immediately came forward and helped her to sit down. Dr. Lin, don't get so worked up. That person is not worth it. If it wasn't for him, you wouldn't have had to get an abortion back then, which caused your health to decline. These words were like thunder crashing in my ears. Child? Olivia was pregnant at that time. My heart sank, and everything around me became blurry. If I hadn't died then, if all of this hadn't happened, wouldn't we have had a happy family now? Not the desperate state we're in now? Liam quickly comforted her. It's a good thing that Ethan was there, accompanying you and taking care of you. Otherwise, How could you have coped on your own? My heart felt as if it was being ripped apart. Pain, anger, and regret intertwined and became an uncontrollable hatred, searing my soul. I hated my carelessness, hated Olivia's ruthlessness, and I hated Ethan, who had destroyed everything I had. During that archaeological dig, Olivia had suddenly made a request of me. She bit her lower lip, seeming to be considering her words. So, Ethan has recently become interested in archaeology. Could you possibly bring him along for your project this time? Let him learn from you. I don't want to. He must have ulterior motives, I said in a low voice, my unease growing more intense. Olivia's face immediately grew cold, a hint of disappointment flashing in her eyes. What I had with him was in the past, she said, her tone somewhat reproachful. How can you see him this way? If you don't trust him, are you questioning me? Watching her turn her back to me, clearly sulking, I felt a sense of helplessness. In the end, I could only sigh and compromise. All right, I agree. But I didn't realize that this decision would become the turning point in our fate. When we arrived at the site, Ethan always seemed distracted, wandering around. One time, I found him trying to take an artifact that had just been unearthed. Without hesitation, I decided to fire him. However, what I didn't expect was that, as I was leaving the archaeological site that evening, he ambushed me. I didn't even have a chance to react when he hit me in the back of the head with a heavy iron rod. I felt a sharp pain. The world in front of me immediately became blurry, and blood flowed from the wound. The warm liquid trickled down my neck. I tried to struggle, to shout, but my throat could not produce a sound. Finally, the world descended into boundless darkness. When Ethan came to pick up Olivia after work, her gaze immediately fell on the obvious scar on his forehead. Olivia said hatefully, "Paul was truly a piece of trash." Ethan smiled slightly, his tone feigning concern. "It doesn't hurt anymore. It's been healed. Don't worry about it. It was too cheap of a punishment to let him run away. He should die out there." I helplessly floated beside them, my heart filled with despair and sorrow. "Olivia, as you wished, I'm already dead. After killing me, Ethan dismembered my body and disposed of the remains. In order to avoid suspicion, he fabricated a lie about me stealing artifacts and fleeing. In order to make it look more believable, he even caused an injury to his own forehead. Everyone had actually believed his lies. Even Olivia, the person I trusted most, had blamed everything on me. She was even concerned for the person who had killed me. But there was nothing I could do. I was forced to follow them back to Olivia's house. Seeing them entering the place that once belonged to us, my heart was filled with anger and helplessness. Everything in this house was decorated by us together. Every corner held our memories. Ethan sighed softly. "Olivia, we're getting married soon. Why don't you move into my place tonight and get used to the environment?" After Olivia agreed, I could only watch as they began to pack things in the house. Suddenly, Ethan accidentally knocked over a bucket of water. The water quickly soaked a box of files on the floor. I saw the files, being soaked, and my heart ached. Those were my parents' only keepsakes, the valuable records of their years of archaeological work. I was furious and wanted to stop it, but I could only watch helplessly. Ethan pretended to be flustered and quickly apologized. "Sorry, Olivia. It wasn't intentional." Olivia glanced at the soaked files and calmly waved her hand, saying lightly, "It's okay. They're all things belonging to that fugitive, Paul. Since he betrayed the archaeological cause, there's no point in keeping this stuff." Hearing her say this, my heart was instantly filled with a towering hatred. She actually considered my parents' precious records worthless and pushed all the blame on me. I was not a traitor, and I never had any doubts about her and archaeology. Yet she believed the lies of Ethan, that traitor, that murderer, without hesitation. This misunderstanding and pain almost made me burst. "Olivia, you claim to be a seeker of truth. Why did you so easily believe him?" After moving into Ethan's house, they invited some friends over for a meal to celebrate this new beginning. The house was filled with laughter, but it sounded jarring to my ears. While they were eating, chatting, and laughing, the topic gradually turned to the past, especially regarding things related to me. Paul was really out of line. How could he have done that kind of thing? Someone said coldly. Yeah, Olivia has really suffered. Luckily, Ethan was there by your side. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened? Another person chimed in, with a tone full of contempt and blame towards me. Yeah, Olivia really had it tough. Someone like Paul really wasn't worthy of her. A female colleague said indignantly. Every word they said was like a knife stabbing into my heart. My palms clenched tightly, and a torrent of anger and humiliation surged up. I watched him holding her and wanted nothing more than to become a vengeful spirit, tearing off his mask of hypocrisy. Just then, there was a soft knock at the door. Everyone turned to see an elderly woman walking in slowly. Her steps were a bit unsteady, her face bearing the deep wrinkles of time. The youthful energy of the past had long gone. Aunt? I was stunned. That was my aunt, whom I had respected since I was a child. After my parents had passed, she had cared for me, meticulously. But now, the passing of 4 years had drained her energy. Her hair was gray, and her expression was tired and sorrowful. Aunt, you've come, Olivia said as she hurried to greet her, her voice showing a hint of surprise and complex emotions. After Aunt sat down, she looked around at everyone, before finally fixing her gaze on Olivia, her eyes filled with deep pity. Olivia, Paul let you down, and he let himself down. He has also failed his parents, who dedicated their lives to archaeology. What he did was truly shameful. Her words were heavy, every word laden with reproach and helplessness. It's all in the past, Aunt, Olivia said softly, trying to comfort her. Let's not talk about it anymore. We need to move on. My aunt sighed, a hint of hesitation flickering in her eyes, but she still decided to speak. When you said you wanted to abort your baby with Paul back then, I disagreed because it was after all a part of our family's bloodline. But you had your difficulties back then. Now it seems that you've found a good home. That's good too. Aunt wishes you happiness. Ha, even Aunt believed that I was a thief. Nobody believed me. At that moment, the phone suddenly rang. After answering the call, the assistant's slightly nervous voice came over the line. Dr. Lin, the reconstruction of the skull is finished. Olivia replied softly, Okay, I'll take a look tomorrow. But the assistant's voice on the phone was trembling, as if trying hard to suppress some kind of emotion. Dr. Lin, you should really come over now. Olivia frowned slightly, hearing the anomaly. What's wrong? The assistant hesitated, before finally saying, That reconstruction image. It looks a lot like Paul. When she arrived at the lab, the police captain had already arrived. He was standing in front of the computer screen, his expression grave. Olivia approached the screen, her gaze fixed on the newly generated reconstruction image. Her heart felt like it had been suddenly gripped. That face, though a little blurry, was more than familiar to her. The police captain said in a deep voice, We have found the other body parts. Based on the forensic examination, the time of death was 4 years ago. In other words, Paul was not lost back then, but was brutally murdered. Olivia's face instantly turned pale. She stared at the blurry face on the screen, tears of disbelief welling up in her eyes. Her fingers involuntarily clenched the edge of the table next to her, as if trying hard to control her emotions. It was Paul's face, the man she had once loved deeply, the man she thought had betrayed her and archaeology. This can't be. Her voice was almost inaudible, and tears began to fall uncontrollably. The assistant, who was standing beside her, looked at Olivia with a complex expression and couldn't help but say softly, Dr. Lin, it seems that Paul didn't flee out of guilt. He was murdered. He was innocent. Hearing this, Olivia's body trembled slightly, as if she was about to collapse. She shook her head slowly, her tears blurring her vision. What did he go through? And at this time, I, standing next to them, felt every bit of her pain and shock. A complicated emotion surged up in my heart. There was the relief of being cleared from being falsely accused, but there was also the deep sorrow for her pain. I had finally been able to clear my name, but why did it have to be in this tragic manner? How I wished that she could have known the truth sooner, instead of finding out after my death. Finally, you all will know the truth. A hint of bitterness arose in my heart. The truth was revealed, but what it brought was irreparable pain. The police captain, seeing Olivia's grief, looked even more grim. He paused for a moment before saying, "Dr. Lin, we now suspect this is a premeditated murder. All the leads from 4 years ago will be re-examined. We will do our best to find the truth and bring justice for Paul." Olivia nodded. Her eyes were filled with determination, and though her body was trembling slightly, her voice was unusually calm. "I will cooperate with you. Paul shouldn't have died like this. I want to know what exactly he went through." A few days later, the police captain took the results of the investigation to Olivia and my aunt. The two women were sitting side by side on the sofa. Aunt's face was even more haggard than before, her eyes filled with grief and self-reproach. "Dr. Lin, the cause of Paul's death has been established," the captain said seriously. "He was intentionally murdered during the archaeological dig. The perpetrator used people around him to forge the illusion that he had stolen artifacts and fled out of guilt. In reality, Paul had already been fatally attacked. The perpetrator then disposed of the body in an attempt to cover up the crime." Hearing this, Aunt burst into tears. She covered her mouth with her hand. Her voice choked with emotion. He was murdered? My child was innocent?" Olivia was also in tears, her voice trembling as she asked, "Who was it? Who killed him? Why did they do this?" The captain sighed and said slowly, "The current suspect is his assistant, Ethan, from his last archaeological dig. We found that. He had a connection with you, Dr. Lin, and he used that connection to join the archaeological team and then planned everything." "Ethan?" Olivia's face turned pale instantly, as if she had heard the name she least wanted to hear. She couldn't believe that the person who had been by her side was actually the murderer who killed Paul. Aunt grabbed Olivia's hand tremblingly and cried, How could this be? How could Ethan do something like this? Why did he kill Paul?" Olivia was in tears, her face filled with pain and shock. "How could I have misjudged him? How could Ethan do this to Paul?" And at that moment, I was standing by them, listening to their cries and regrets, my heart filled with complicated emotions. Finally, my name had been cleared, but I wish that none of this had ever happened. If I were still alive, we could have had a happy family already, not this endless grief and irreparable regret. During the investigation, the police encountered some difficulties. Although the evidence chain was gradually formed, they were still missing concrete material evidence that could directly point to Ethan. Ethan was very cautious and had carefully covered up all the traces. The captain had to consult with Olivia, hoping to use her to lead Ethan into revealing the truth. That night, Olivia mentioned the matter casually. "Recently, the police have found some clues. They found a surveillance camera near the site." Hearing this, Ethan's heart skipped a beat, but he quickly hid his inner nervousness, pretending to be calm as he replied, "Oh, a surveillance camera? That place is in the middle of nowhere. What could it have recorded?" Olivia smiled slightly, pretending to be casual as she asked, "Yeah, that place is really remote. But they said that the video is still being restored and that they might discover some unexpected things." "It's impossible to have recorded anything." Olivia pressed him. "Why are you so sure?" "Because I already took the surveillance footage away." Hearing these words, the police who had been lying in wait outside the room rushed in and took Ethan into custody. Ethan's expression changed drastically. He looked at the surrounding police in terror, finally realizing that he had been tricked. He was taken to the police station to be formally interrogated. At first, Ethan was very calm, insisting that he had nothing to do with my death, saying that his earlier words were merely nonsense. "I'm just an ordinary person. I've never participated in any archaeological digs, let alone involved in any murder," Ethan sneered. "You don't have any evidence that can prove that I have any connection to this incident." However, the captain clearly did not plan to let him off so easily. As the interrogation continued, the captain presented a key piece of evidence: fingerprints found at the archaeological site from back then, and a surveillance video that had been hidden in Ethan's house for years. In the video, Ethan's figure was clearly visible as he moved my body. Ethan's expression finally began to waver. His sneer gradually froze on his face, and a hint of panic showed in his eyes. He understood that the evidence was enough to push him into the abyss. Outside the interrogation room, Olivia heard Ethan's confession from the captain, and she instantly froze. Her eyes were filled with flames of anger. Her fingers clenched into fists so tightly her nails dug deep into her palms. "You beast!" Olivia suddenly rushed into the room, pounding on the table separating her from Ethan, tears streaming down her face. "How could you do this? How could you do this to him?" Ethan was startled by her sudden attack. His face showed a trace of panic as he tried to avoid Olivia's blows without moving. He said softly, "Olivia, it wasn't intentional. I just love you. I really had no choice. I was so jealous seeing you being so close with Paul, but I really didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted you to leave him. I couldn't control myself." "Love me? Is this love?" Olivia's voice trembled with rage. "For your own jealousy, you actually killed an innocent person. You used such dirty methods to slander him and make everyone think he was a criminal. You don't understand what love is. You're a vile and despicable murderer. You not only killed him, but also destroyed the happiness we should have had." Olivia's voice was filled with despair and pain. "You watched me suffer for the past 4 years, watching me live with self-blame and guilt every day. Didn't you feel any remorse at all?" At first, Ethan continued to deny it, claiming that he had done everything because he loved her. He had lost control because he was jealous of me. However, when he saw Olivia's cold expression, he suddenly gave a distorted smile, his tone mocking. "You say that you love Paul, but why did you easily believe it when I said he was a thief? Why have you never doubted my words in these 4 years?" Olivia's face instantly turned pale. Her heart was severely stung by Ethan's words. She suppressed her tears and asked coldly, "What exactly are you trying to say?" Ethan continued to sneer. "Don't you think it's laughable? You keep saying you love him, but you never truly understood him. You don't even have the most basic trust in him. You accepted my slander of him so easily and considered him a despicable thief. And all I did was exploit your suspicion and distrust towards him." Olivia's heart felt like it was being cut. She recalled everything that had happened over the past 4 years, and her heart was filled with guilt and regret. Her voice trembled slightly. "I trusted you. I thought you were the closest person to me, but you betrayed me and you killed him." Looking at her pain, Ethan's tone was filled with a cruel pleasure. "Is this what you call love? If you really loved him, why didn't you investigate? The truth? For 4 years, your trust in him was only based on the few words I said. You never loved him. You were just deceiving yourself." Olivia couldn't hold back her tears any longer. She couldn't refute Ethan's accusations because his words hit her deepest wounds. She hated Ethan, and she hated her own gullibility and weakness even more. For 4 years, she had been living in pain and regret, but she had never truly tried to uncover the truth. And all of this had resulted in her losing the person she loved most. "You're right." Olivia's voice was low and hoarse. "I don't deserve to say I loved him. I'm sorry to him." As the investigation continued to progress, Ethan's criminal acts were exposed, one by one, like layers of an onion. In addition to the shocking murder, what was even more shocking was his collusion with an overseas art theft ring. After a night of interrogation and investigation by the police, Ethan's crimes were finally confirmed. What awaited him was the most severe punishment of the law, the death penalty. This sentence, though late, finally came. It was like a fresh breeze, sweeping away the haze in my heart. It allowed me to see the light again after being in the darkness of misunderstanding. Justice, though delayed, was not absent. However, fate's twists and turns didn't end there. Olivia's world was hit by another blow. The doctor's diagnosis was like a bolt of lightning from the blue. She was pregnant. This sudden news was both a joy and a sorrow for her, impossible to put into words. Her heart was filled with endless hatred for Ethan and complicated feelings towards this innocent life. After careful consideration, Olivia made a difficult decision: to give up the child. This was not just out of hatred for Ethan, but also because her heart was unable to bear the weight. She didn't want this life to become a reminder of what she had once missed. Ethan's parents were heartbroken and in despair when they learned of their son's fate. Though they knew that they couldn't undo their son's crimes, they still clung to a glimmer of hope and reached out to Olivia. Their eyes were full of pleading and despair as they begged Olivia in a trembling voice to allow the child to be born, promising to give the child all the love and compensation they could muster. Their words revealed endless sadness and helplessness, but also betrayed the deep longing of parents. Faced with Ethan's parents' plea, Olivia's eyes were firm and complicated. She took a deep breath, trying to make her voice sound calmer and more resolute. "I understand how you feel, but this child is not only Ethan's bloodline, but also proof of his deceit towards me. I can't let this child become a witness to the tragedy between me and Paul, and I can't let him come into this world burdened with such fate. Please forgive my decision. This is a principle I cannot compromise on." Ethan's parents' faces turned ashen. They knew that nothing they could say would change Olivia's decision. In silence, they turned slowly, and with endless sorrow and disappointment, they left this place filled with pain and difficult choices. On the day of Ethan's execution, Olivia and Aunt came to my grave together. For years had passed, and I was finally able to rest in this peaceful place. On the tombstone, the words "dedicated to archaeology" were simple, but weighty, recording my short but brilliant life. The morning light shone gently on the cemetery, and a light breeze brought a subtle coolness. Olivia stood in front of the tomb, her face haggard, as if she had been worn down by both time and pain. Her eyes were empty and deep, revealing endless grief. "Paul," she murmured softly, "today, justice has finally been done for you, but I know you won't forgive me." Aunt held Olivia's hand tightly, giving her warmth and strength. "Olivia, you've endured too much, but Ethan has already been punished. It's time to let go of the past and look forward, for yourself and for those who still care about you." Olivia's eyes turned red, tears welling up in her eyes. "I know, but the regret and self-blame in my heart are like a mountain, suffocating me. If only I had listened to Paul back then and not let Ethan join the dig team, perhaps none of this would have happened, and my child wouldn't have—" Her voice choked and she couldn't continue. Aunt hugged Olivia tightly, comforting her softly. "Olivia, we can't change the past. Every decision you made back then was based on trust and goodwill. Ethan's evil deeds are not your fault. You shouldn't blame yourself for his crimes." Olivia sobbed in Aunt's arms. Her voice was filled with deep pain and self-blame. "But if I had exposed Ethan's true face sooner, perhaps things wouldn't be so bad. My trust in him led us into the abyss. Paul's death, the loss of my child, these are wounds I cannot let go of." Her voice almost broke, filled with unspeakable pain. "Every time I think about it, my heart feels like it's being ripped apart. Now I can only live with this endless regret and unrelenting pain. I really don't know how to face all these mistakes." The sunlight pierced through the clouds and shone on them, as if putting an end to this painful past. After my death, Olivia fell into a long period of self-imposed exile. She could barely continue her work as a cranial reconstructionist because she felt she was not worthy of being a seeker of truth. She donated the valuable archaeological records that my parents had left me to the research institute, keeping only a few papers. With my notes as a keepsake, these notes held my passion and dedication to archaeology and were the only memento she had of me. Olivia's heart was full of regret and self-blame for the past. She traveled to the archaeological sites where I had worked. In those excavation sites, her figure seemed to be covered by the dust of history. She tried to feel the traces that I had left behind in the relics and soil. With each touch, each excavation, she seemed to be searching for a way to redeem herself. She would often stay alone at the dig sites, gazing at the excavation sites. While she felt the hardship and dedication of archaeology, she also felt deep remorse for not being able to protect me and our child. 10 years later, Olivia returned to my aunt. At that time, Aunt's health had deteriorated and the passage of time was evident on her face. When she saw Olivia return, her eyes showed infinite relief and anticipation. Olivia sat down by Aunt's bedside, her voice filled with deep regret. "Aunt, I finally understand. The pain of the past can't be erased, but in those archaeological sites, I could feel the scenes from back then. I could feel Paul's dedication and hardship during his work. I know I can't change the past, but I must move forward. For myself and for Paul. Aunt gently stroked Olivia's hand, her voice warm but meaningful. Olivia, you can't let the pain of the past become a burden on your life. You always need to come back, otherwise, once I'm gone, there will be no one to remember Paul. You need to find your direction again. The pain of the past should become a motivation for you to move forward, not a hindrance. Olivia nodded, a determined light flashing in her eyes. I won't forget Paul. The past can't be changed, but what I can do is move forward and not let Paul's contributions be buried. So, Olivia returned to work. She continued to perform cranial reconstruction and to help victims uncover the truth. She never married, dedicating all her love and care to her adopted son, whom she named Liam. Olivia continued my unfinished career in her own way, passing the light of justice and truth to the next generation. Liam's extra chapter. Olivia is my mother, or more accurately, my adoptive mother. She often holds me in her arms and tells me about her past and those stories that were never fully revealed. Sometimes, I feel like her eyes are looking past the depths of time, a deep contemplation and remembrance of the past. I remember once, while sitting in the warm living room, my mother took out an old notebook from the bookshelf. The yellowed paper on the cover, and those simple notes, evoked the weight of time. She gently opened it, her eyes filled with a soft light. That was the first time I heard her tell the story of Paul. These are the notes your father left behind. Her voice tinged with an emotion that she couldn't hide. He was a very amazing person. He dedicated his life to archaeology and made countless contributions. She told me how she had met my father, how he had been wronged and betrayed, and how he had finally been vindicated. Every detail was narrated by my mother, and her eyes were often filled with tears. Your father once said that archaeology is not only about tracing the past, but is also a commitment to the future. My mother stroked the cover of the notebook as she said softly, he was always so determined. He wanted to uncover the truth and protect those artifacts. Sometimes, I wonder if things would be different if your father was still here. My mother's voice became low. In that quiet night, I looked at my mother's face. Her expression was filled with deep thought. Her longing and remembrance intertwined and became a part of her life. She worked hard as a cranial reconstructionist, and when the night was quiet, she would often sit at her desk and open the old notebooks, as if talking to my father. Every year, on the anniversary of his death, my mother would go to a particular archaeological site, searching for traces of Paul. Those places seemed to have become her spiritual home. She told me that she felt as if she could sense my father there. Olivia's dream. If she had chosen a different path. The air in the hospital room was filled with the smell of disinfectant. Olivia was lying weakly in bed, feeling her body gradually weakening. The sunlight from outside streamed in through the curtains, illuminating her pale face. She closed her eyes and her consciousness began to blur. That year, I was standing outside of Paul's office, holding Ethan's resume in my hand, hesitating. Olivia, are you really going to ask me to bring Ethan? Paul was sitting at his desk, his tone laced with confusion. I don't think he's suitable for this project. I looked into his eyes, my heart in turmoil. Ethan was like a younger brother to me. I knew that he wanted to prove himself in the archaeology field, but Paul's instincts and judgments made me waver. After a few seconds of silence, I took a deep breath and placed the resume back into my bag. You're right, Paul, I said finally, my tone filled with determination. He's not suitable for this project. I'll find another opportunity to help him. Paul gave a satisfied smile. He nodded and gently took my hand. Thank you, Olivia. Thus, Ethan didn't join the archaeological team. Paul continued with the work and, after overcoming many difficulties, succeeded in unearthing precious artifacts. Paul also became a rising star in the archaeological community thanks to this excavation. A few years later, Paul and I were standing on the balcony of our new home, overlooking the city lights. He gently hugged me, saying softly, Olivia, I have a surprise for you. I turned around and saw a small box in his hand. Inside was an exquisite ring. "Marry me, Olivia." His eyes were filled with tenderness and determination. My heart suddenly accelerated, and my eyes became wet. Tears fell uncontrollably as I nodded my head, agreeing to marry him. We had a simple but warm wedding, with only a few family members and close friends witnessing the moment. Our married life was full of happiness and contentment. We both contributed our efforts in our own respective fields. We welcomed a new life, a healthy baby. We named him Paul Jr. Seeing Paul holding our child, my heart was filled with gratitude and happiness. Time passed day by day. My and Paul's career and our family were thriving. We went through many trials together, but we overcame them all. Our child grew up, intelligent and lively, just like his father. Olivia's consciousness gradually returned to the hospital room, her face still bearing the happy smile from her dream. But when she opened her eyes, what greeted her was the empty hospital room and biting cold. Olivia's tears fell as she murmured, "If I hadn't let Ethan join the dig team back then, would we have had a happy family? Would we have been able to grow old together?" But she knew that there was no second chance in life. Reality wouldn't change because of her regrets. Everything had become the past. In the last moments of her life, Olivia's heart was still filled with longing for Paul and regret for the family that had never been. She closed her eyes as if returning to that happy dream again. In that fictitious world, she and Paul were welcoming a bright future together. However, the hospital instruments emitted a final alarm. Her life had finally come to an end. Olivia left this world forever, with her final regrets and remorse.